Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll be getting started in a few minutes. Hi, everyone. Thank you again. Welcome, everyone. My name is Silai Karzai, and I'm the Communications Manager at Central Asia Institute. We're excited to have you here today. This is a somber moment, but we're happy you're here to discuss this important topic. We'll be joined by Ambassador Adela Raz and Central Asia Institute's Executive Director, Alice Thomas. I'll be passing it later to my colleague, Bella Pick, who will facilitate the audience Q&A. Please use the Q&A box for questions as they arise. Before we get started, I want to introduce Eileen Shields-West, board member at Central Asia Institute, who will provide a few introductory remarks. Eileen is an accomplished journalist, author, and philanthropist who has been on the CAI board since 2020. She serves as the board secretary. She was a journalist with Time magazine and was a reporter for CBS, CNN, and NPR, where she made a practice delving into complex issues. For the past 24 years, she's focused on complexities in the humanitarian space and in education. She's chair emeritus of Refugees International, a leading nonprofit organization that advocates for refugees and a member of Georgetown University's Master of Foreign Service Advisory Board. Thank you, Eileen.
Well, thank you, Silai. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending today's discussion on the current crisis in Afghanistan, especially for women and girls, and what CAI is doing to overcome the challenges to continue to deliver our education programs. We are so excited to be partnering on this event with the Afghanistan Policy Lab and at Princeton University School of Public and International Affairs, and to have with us today the lab's remarkable director, Ambassador Adela Raz. Later on in the program, we'll be hearing from Ambassador Raz and the important work of the lab. But right now, I want to extend a big thank you to the ambassador and her team at APL. Last but not least, I want to thank all of you for your dedicated support of Central Asia Institute and for your caring and concern for the women and girls we serve. As a board member, I am extremely proud that CAI is still working in Afghanistan and delivering our mission. When many other organizations have left or been forced to leave, CAI has stayed the course. This is only possible because of all of you. So thank you. And now, Silai, I'm turning it back to you.
Thank you so much, Eileen. I would like to now introduce Alice Thomas, who's the Executive Director of Central Asia Institute. Alice Thomas has been in this role since 2019. Previously, she served on CAI's board of directors. She has a long career in international development and humanitarian affairs, advocating for a number of social justice issues, including refugee rights, democratic governance, and climate action, and on behalf of marginalized people, including women and girls. Thank you, Alice.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you to my team, Salai and Bella, and to Eileen, and very much to Ambassador Raz and her team at the Afghan Policy Lab at Princeton. We're so excited to have all of you here today, and thank you for joining. Next Friday, August 15th, marks 4 years since the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan amid a chaotic and deadly U.S. withdrawal. 4 years on, I'm very proud that CAI continues to work in Afghanistan, as Eileen said. Navigating the challenges of working under the Taliban these past 4 years has not been easy for a small organization like CAI. But I can say that thanks to the determination and commitment of our overseas implementing partners who work in country, to our staff and our board, and because of your support, we've been able to do that, and that we've never left over these past 4 years, and even today continue to provide education programs to Afghan boys and girls. It's true, we've had to modify our programs as the Taliban has increasingly imposed restrictions on Afghan women and girls' rights to education and work. But occasionally, I get the question, what is the point of educating an Afghan girl if she can only go to school through 6th grade? I have to ask in response, put yourself in her shoes. What if you were an Afghan girl who wanted to go to school, who wanted to read, who wanted to write, and the world's response to you was, well, it's just not worth it? As an Afghan colleague once said to me, every time we give up, when we give up on Afghan women and girls, we are handing a victory to the Taliban. So for CAI, doing nothing is not an option. We have to work continuously to look for ways to continue to support women and girls in a very restrictive environment. But we can't let go of their hands no matter what. And I'm just so grateful to everyone and to all of you for making that possible. So today's event is going to start off with a little quick recap of Afghanistan, about the country and what's going on right now, and also a recap of CAI's current programs, and then we'll turn to a discussion with Ambassador Raz. I think most of you on this call are familiar with Central Asia Institute. But you can see our mission is to advance access to education, especially for girls and women, in remote and mountainous regions of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan. On the right, you can see a list of our current partner organizations with whom we work to implement these programs, and without whom we could not do the work that we do. So we're very grateful to them. Here's a map. I always love showing maps. This is the map of where CAI works in these 3 countries. I think it's important to note that while these countries are enormously different, where our programs converge is geographically in the very high mountain region. This is the Pamirs, the Himalayas, the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush. They all come together in northern Pakistan and in Badakhshan region of Afghanistan, and in the Gorno-Badakhshan region of Tajikistan. On this map, you can see in blue is the part of Afghanistan where we are working now. We got our start in 2001 working in the Wakhan Valley of Afghanistan, which is that little spit of land, kind of like a thumb that sticks out and is sandwiched between Tajikistan to the north and Pakistan to the south. Today, our programs continue to focus on these regions. So a bit on Afghanistan. This slide just presents some basic statistics. I'll point out that it's about the size of Texas. The population is about 44 million people, very diverse ethnically. The literacy rate remains very low, despite a lot of progress over 20 years. Only about half of Afghans are literate. And the latest statistic we have from UNESCO is that literacy rates among women overall is only at 22%. Today, the country, the challenges have been ongoing, since the country's been, faced with decades of war. But today things have really grown worse under the Taliban, and most recently because of other factors. The result is that about 75% of the population in Afghanistan struggles to meet their daily needs. Rural communities, female-headed households, and internally displaced people are the most affected. Food insecurity and malnutrition have increased. There's about almost 15 million people that are food insecure in Afghanistan. That includes 3 million children and 1 million young mothers who are acutely malnourished. At the same time, Afghanistan's neighbors and other countries are sending Afghan refugees home. There's about almost 2 million Afghans that have been forcibly returned from Iran and Pakistan so far this year alone. And then there are another 4 million Afghans who are internally displaced. So taking us back a bit to the history around progress on educating Afghan women and girls, when the US and its allies invaded in 2001, the education system was largely in shambles. As the first Taliban regime was driven out, they also had a policy that they had banned girls and women's education altogether. So at that point in time, there were less than 3% of girls that were enrolled in school. But over the next 2 decades, one of the brightest spots in Afghanistan was this major push to enroll girls in school. By 2021, 2 decades later, and by the time the US left and the Taliban came back into control, there were 2.5 million girls enrolled in school. Women's presence in higher education had increased almost 20-fold, and women's literacy rates had doubled to about 30%. Over those 2 decades, CAI had supported a wide array of education programs for males and females that range from, all the way from early childhood education to scholarships for teachers. We had a lot of literacy training for women. We had public health training for women as well. And we were able to support, again, a whole array of programs over those 2 decades. But 4 years ago, when the Taliban came in, as I think all of you are well aware, it became a strategy of control to target women and girls. And one of the ways that the Taliban has done that is to dismantle progress towards women's education. The timeline is here. The Taliban returned to power on August 15th. That a month later, they refused to open up secondary schools for girls when they usually reopen for the new school year. They opened for boys, but not for girls. And the Taliban was saying at the time, oh, we're working on the new curriculum for girls' education. Well, today they have not reopened schools for girls beyond 6th grade. By early 2023, UNESCO reports that 80% of school-aged Afghan females, which was 2.5 million females, were out of school. By December of 2024, female students were barred from studying medicine in private universities. Today, Afghanistan is the only country in the world where women and girls are barred from accessing education. I think another thing to consider is just that given Afghanistan's bulging youth population, almost half of the Afghan population is under the age of 18, is that it's clearly a strategy that they want to de-educate the public. And with 75% of the population living in rural areas where access to education is the most challenging, it is, unquestionably a strategy to de-educate and roll back progress on education for all Afghans, but especially women and girls. So what are we doing? Well, today we are really doubling down on what we can do, which is providing primary education. That's through grade 6, with the goal of rolling as many children as possible into primary school. And I should just say we can't meet the demand for that in the communities where we work. Most of those students are girls, and getting those children to through 6th grade and to a reading and writing and basic math level where they have the foundation of knowledge and education to continue, if only through self-learning and informal education. We support the salaries and training also for teachers, mostly women, and this is one of the sectors where women are allowed to work. And then we've also been providing scholarship for Afghan women in Tajikistan as well. To share a little bit about this community-based approach to primary education that CAI has adapted, the way this program works is that because the school infrastructure in Afghanistan is in such disrepair and shambles, and there are so few government schools, the approach the international community has taken over the past 2 decades and in the time that we really made progress was to introduce community-based education, which basically means setting up classrooms in partnership with communities in areas where there were no government schools. So the way it works is that we identify communities that have high numbers of out-of-school children, especially girls. The community invites us and our partners to set up a class, and we do that by finding a community space, usually a teacher's home or somebody in the community provides a space. We set up a classroom, we provide all the supplies, we train and recruit the teachers, and we follow the national curriculum. And we also train the community, the shuras, or who are really the village elders, to manage the schools so that there's a lot of ownership and sustainability. Here are a few snapshots to give you an idea of what these classrooms look like. This is one from Kabul province. You can see this is just looks like an unfinished building. And here is a photograph from Kunar province. And another one from Badakhshan province. And this photograph actually was taken just a few weeks ago. The second program that we're focusing on now is how can we reach older girls and women? And we've done this through starting a new program. We're calling it Women's Small Business and Economic Empowerment Program, because it's not just livelihood skills per se. It's working to provide women who can actually already have some education to continue to provide education to them through financial literacy. And we give this training to them to start small businesses. And this is backed up with market assessments of sectors that are likely to succeed in the communities where they work. So we just finished 2 market assessments earlier this year. Here are some of the sectors that have been identified for being ones that women are going to be trained to start up businesses. There's mushroom cultivation, livestock raising, dairy production, jam making, and pickling. These programs are twofold. They're not only just to support women to operate and run their own businesses, but it's also to provide much needed income to these rural households at a time that the economy, poverty rates are so high. And again, here are some very recent photos of the participants. This is a group that's learning how to process cheese. And there's the mushroom cultivation, and then some of the photographs from that training. All of this is possible because of you. So again, I just can't thank you for making it possible. We couldn't do it without you. So now I'm excited to welcome Ambassador Roz. She served as the last ambassador to the Republic of Afghanistan, to the United States from the Republic of Afghanistan. Prior to that, she was the first the first female ambassador and permanent representative of Afghanistan to the United Nations, and currently the director of the Afghan Policy Lab at Princeton, Afghanistan Policy Lab at Princeton University. So welcome, Ambassador Roz.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, and I want to just start off by asking you a question.
Sure.
We're so grateful to you with all you've done in your career, that you are continuing to put your leadership and your vision to work in the service of the future of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, what inspired the founding of the Afghanistan Policy Lab, and what do you hope it'll achieve in the coming years?
Sure. So first of all, let me thank you, Alice, for really putting together today's conversation and this really critical subject, which is very close to my heart, and that's girls' education. I'm also very honored that the Afghanistan Policy Lab at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs was one of your co-partners for today's conversation. And my gratitude to all of the supporters who have joined us today and listening to our discussion. And I personally truly enjoyed your presentation, so much to learn, and really hands off to you and your team for the work that you are doing. So congratulations. It's not easy, and standing there and continuously doing what you're doing is really important. Now coming in and trying to answer your question in terms of how did we come up with the Afghanistan Policy Lab at Princeton? To be really honest, it was an innovative idea by the school itself. This was really after the fall, and with so much warmth, here in the US, various communities and especially academia opened their arms and hearts to figure out a way on how to contribute to the disastrous situation in Afghanistan, and how to help for Afghans to get out of it, or at least find a way to really make sure that where we live today, and it's a very complex world, unfortunately conflicts are arising in different parts of the world, that Afghanistan, especially women of Afghanistan and the Afghans who live inside the country, would be not forgotten. And the work that you're doing, somehow similar to the same element, but more from overseas and from abroad. So it was an idea with the school, and of course we had brainstormed at the time and really finding what would be the best footprint to start. And one thing that really comes along with when discussing about Afghanistan at the policy level, not only now, but even for the last 25 years, there had been a lot of discussion and really a vacuum left out there where the voices of Afghans themselves being in the forefront of proposing and recommending policies that could be relevant for Afghanistan was always there. Of course, it was filled up, but not to the utmost level, and especially in the DC area and at the think tank community, that was one of the spaces left. And the objective was really to elevate the voices of Afghans. That was the first part, and the voices of Afghans who were practitioners, policymakers, academia, and thought producers that could come forward and really look into the challenging situation of Afghanistan right now, which it focuses in four spaces: the Afghanistan Policy Lab. It's really the humanitarian situation and the economic. The second is really the civic space. The third is women's rights and human rights. And the fourth is the healing and reconciliation process of Afghanistan. So bringing Afghan scholars to really think through and find potential alternatives to the current crises. So that's the sort of where the thought came, and it was launched. Afghanistan Policy Lab was launched in spring of 2022, and since then it had been a hub and a space for Afghan voices to come forward, and with our great partners like you all to help us, and Princeton being the hub, and the School of Public and International Affairs really the platform for it to launch and really make sure that there is a path for peace and stability in Afghanistan.
And can you explain the importance of having just talk a little bit about the fellows and the importance of what role they play and their importance in the lab's work?
Sure. Look, you talked about education, right? And you talked about the critical elements and how much it is important for stability and peace in any country, and especially in a country like Afghanistan. And you just presented the figures that it had been always low, and one could easily relate that to the instability that Afghanistan had been witnessing and seeing for since 1975, so for a really, really long time. And that's the sad story. But parallel to this, there is a positive story. There is a positive story, which is the story of the resilience, the story of Afghan scholars, the story of where we have Afghan fellows, those who, despite all the challenges, still continue to move forward and be educated, be the voices, be the change maker inside the country for those who could, and for those who could not, still be the relevant voices and trying to contribute in any way possible to the narrative and the discussion in terms of policy designs. And so at the Afghanistan Policy Lab, we have Afghan fellows who comes on and joins us on a yearly basis. And it's really a platform for them to tackle one of the four subjects that we are covering in a broader space, and really look into it to how what could be done, or how to create a spotlight for one of the challenges, and really make sure that the stakeholders who are engaged inside Afghanistan would be able to incorporate some of the recommendations that comes in. And speaking about education, for instance, right now we have two of our amazing fellows who are working on two different areas of the education subjects related to education. One really looking into it and trying to figure out if there is a way for accreditation of all the informal platforms that exist for education right now in Afghanistan. It could be community-based and virtual as well. And our other fellow, he's really looking to how technology could be a potential tool to tap on, especially AI, in the space that where we live in the 21st century, a potential alternative for education, and especially what you said, equipping Afghan women for a new market that's arriving, and it's a competitive and hard and difficult. So it's subjects like that and discussions like that, and our fellows do contribute to discussions in these four different areas.
Can you tell us how your experience as an Afghan woman shaped your leadership and advocacy?
I think not only mine. To be very honest, whoever are right now even listening to us, we have all come together for a cause and a purpose in a subject that it really matters to us. So I feel whoever we are right now, it's not only the leadership of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 individuals. We all have identified a certain paths and ways on how to find our footprint that we think could potentially make a difference. For me, I was raised and born in Afghanistan, and this is my first time migrating from the country and being outside of Afghanistan. And until even during the first time when Taliban arrived, I was inside the country. I was one of those younger kids that you showed the images who were educated in one of those community schools. I had a very small version of such school in my own area at the time as a young teenager, trying to teach, and you said whatever I could offer, and that was very basic literacy and basic math, and nothing beyond that, because I didn't know much more than that, and was there until 2004. And in 2004, I came on a scholarship to the US, which I was discussing with Eileen earlier. And I studied in the US. And for every Afghan, both men and women, and when an opportunity arrives, just because it has been a country in conflict for such a long time, and I think it's human nature, when you don't have something, you really value it. And that's really peace and stability and the opportunity to be educated. So for any of us, when we got the opportunity to study, we took advantage of that, and we really tried to excel it and pursue that as much as possible. So I came to the US, I studied in here, and I did both my bachelor's and master's, and then I went back home. And I continued to be first in the nonprofit sector, and then moved to the government, to the public sector. And I joined first time the government, it was in 2013. And I always share the story. It was really that discussion of withdrawal and Afghanistan falling back then. And a lot of us, like today, here, we were really thinking and figuring out a way on how to help and contribute. So that's how my path and my journey started. But I must say, Alice, I'm not the only one. You have come across a lot of young Afghan women, and of course by now I'm not the younger one. There are much younger of generation who are determined, powerful, inspirational, and you're saying, it really brings you to this element. How can you give up? Because when they're not giving up, so there is so many of them, and I'm just like a small part of that. And for me, even now moving forward, which post fall, the second time when Taliban came in, majority of us, we were so heartbroken that we couldn't put ourselves together to move forward. And I always say, for me, the reason that I could put myself together and really move forward, it was the younger generation of Afghans who live inside the country. Despite all the hardship, they still hold on to hope. And I will share you a story with you. 2 years ago, I had an event at the UN, and we had a young Afghan woman. She was second year in college here. She was in the US on a scholarship for studies as an international student. And over lunch, we sat together, and I asked her, just out of curiosity, what is she studying? And she told me political science. And then she's like, I'm studying because I heard, I knew you studied political science. And I kind of scratched my head like the way I do. And I'm like, why would she do that in this very, very difficult time? Because, what would you do with a political science degree versus if you have a practical degree in science or finance so that you could get a better job? So I didn't stop myself. I sort of asked, and I said, well, what do you want to be in the future? Because it's like, okay, this way I probably will get my answer. And guess what she said? She said she wanted to be the first Afghan woman president for Afghanistan. So you know, I was so ashamed of myself at that moment that I doubted her decision, and almost thinking, I really don't have even the choice to not try to do what I can. And I think that's where it sort of comes to what you started at the beginning. What as a collective community we can do at this moment, despite everything looks grim and sad and dark and gray. And we do scratch our head and we're trying to figure out, why are we still continuing to educate younger women in Afghanistan when we potentially may see there is no future for them? And that question may not be invalid, right? It's an absolute valid question. But at the same time, if those younger women do not want to give up and they still want to continue, if they still want to move, the hope needs to be still alive. And for me, you know, one day my hope turned to a reality, and who knows, maybe one day for them as well.
Well, that is just, you are the embodiment and the living example of, you know, and inspiration for the young woman you spoke to. I mean, you look where you rose to, from that little community school and what you were able to achieve. And so, again, it goes without mention that it just takes, I mean, what one girl even can achieve in her lifetime, not just to her community and her family, but, you know, to her country. Look what you achieved. So again, I mean, there are no words to express how grateful we are to you for your continued leadership. And it leads me to my next question, which is, at a time when policy, international policy, or I should say US policy, has changed towards the world and towards Afghanistan. How has the work of the lab shifted? And what do you continue to see as the role of the lab in influencing US policy towards Afghanistan?
Really important question. And look, I said this at the beginning. We don't live in easy times. We really live in difficult times. I mean, left and right, we look around. You don't hear anything, unfortunately, these days, anything positive globally in terms of the numbers of conflicts, new conflicts that are arising, correct? And that, and then, of course, when in 2021, August of 2021, when Kabul fell, for a lot, like majority of us, we thought probably this is the situation on crises on earth right now, and here we are. But look, after that, we had so many more. So for us at the Afghanistan Policy Lab, that and then with the evolving policy options for Afghanistan, it makes us even more determined to stay strong and focused, not just because we're trying to resist. It's just more to make sure that in these difficult times, there are voices from Afghanistan and Afghan voices that are able to look into the dire situation inside the country and come with policy option that could be relevant for the country. And it has not been easy. It's very difficult because we really want to make sure we have stayed neutral. We wish to move forward in that direction, stay neutral, because for us, US and the international community were the allies that really helped to bring the spotlight and the change that at least is made a difference in my life, in the generation that I belong to, that 20 years. And the friendship between the two nations is much stronger and very heavy and extremely important. So it's very important that in these times, our focus is really to the long-term stability and peace in Afghanistan. And I must say, we have always had greater support than disagreement in a lot of what we are doing and what we are moving forward with, which is extremely encouraging. And of course, there are in the current stage of where resources are extremely limited, and that of course affects your work, my work, and so many other great entities that have been doing wonderful work. It makes it much harder, but I must say we internally took a lot of that constraint administratively, but in terms of our outcome in the work and deliverable, we really wanted to make sure that stays untouched and still moving forward. And in that sense, we have been really blessed with great encouragement, and where we're very blessed to be at the great school where public policy and issues related like Afghanistan is really critical for the community that we are working with. And of course, all of you. So I think in that sense, we are continuing much harder than before and much focused than before, but with great acknowledgement that what we wish to offer and propose should be relevant to Afghans inside the country, and as well as policies of our partner nations, in a sense that it affects both ways positively.
So time is flying, and I do want to hand it over back to Bella, and we would like to hear your questions. So if you haven't put them in the chat, you can do that, and I'll let Bella moderate.
Hi, thanks, Alice. And thank you to all of our participants who submitted questions to our Q&A box. As Silai mentioned in the beginning, I am Bella Pick, our communication associate here, and I will be facilitating our Q&A. And we have a lot of excellent questions, so we will do our best to answer all of them. First, I would like to start with you, Alice. One question we received is, what programs and services have proven effective in delivering educational and practical skills training to underserved communities, and how does CAI sustain them?
Well, thank you for the question. I would say that through everything that's gone on these past 4 years, what has proven to be most successful was our original approach in Afghanistan and elsewhere. The organization has always worked with local implementing partners. These are national nonprofit organizations. And that has, those organizations are the ones that work very closely with communities in the rural and remote areas we serve. And they are, staffed by all Afghans. And it's that grassroots approach that has proven successful. So if these were not community-led programs, if they were not implemented in partnership, not just with our local partners, but with communities, they wouldn't be sustainable. So as I mentioned, there's a huge demand for girls' education and for education period in a country where so many children are still out of school. And the one thing I think communities learned and the public learned, even in rural areas over 20 years, was the only way out of poverty is through education. So I think Afghans know that, and so we can't meet the demand. So that community-led approach has been successful. I would say for women's programs, it's really about ensuring that the activities are responsive to local needs. So for us, it was about these market assessments. There's a lot of training that has gone on for women over the years. We felt like to be successful, we had to really take advantage of so many educated women, even in rural areas that were perhaps older girls. Some of these participants are 16 years old. They would be in school right now, but they can't. So if we can bring them in through a program to teach them to start a business, even if it's in, cattle raising or livestock, at least they're supporting a business and hiring other women and learning financial literacy. So I think that is the other thing that's proven successful.
Thank you, Alice. I'd like to switch now to Ambassador Raz. We have a question from Marakan, who is interested in how the Afghan Policy Lab at Princeton and your team is shaping policy-based advocacy, and how does your work impact this policy?
Sure. Look, since the inception of the Afghanistan Policy Lab, we have tried to target our audience, who they are. And just because we are based between Princeton and Washington, so it's really the U.S. Administration here with the State Department, and especially with the former administration and special envoys that we had both the special envoy for human rights and women affairs, and also special envoy's office for the larger Afghanistan political issues, and as well as with the United Nations and special envoy's offices in the region. We have tried to make sure that when our fellows put together their policy recommendation on certain subjects, and if it is related to humanitarian aid, for instance, we have been a strong advocate at the time, if people can recall, right after the fall. And just at the beginning, there was this larger question of, shall we continue to send aid to Afghanistan or not? Because there you could hear people were very, very strongly arguing against it, because they thought sending aid will empower Taliban and legitimize them, and there was no interest in that. And there was also somehow limited voices if that there had to be aid sent. And we took a very deeper look into the situation at the time, and aid was an incredibly important element for women and men and the younger generation in Afghanistan, and we were a strong advocate for that aid needs to be sent. And we had a deeper look on ways and mechanisms, and community approach was one of them, that could be tapped on for effective aid distribution that could not go in hands of Taliban and empowering their governance, but rather than really reaching to those who were in need. So we were extremely strong and effective on that stage. And in terms of education, we have started from the first day until now, because there was also this whole debate, and Alice probably knows, and your CI knows this very well, if supporting education in Afghanistan, in even online education, is a better option or not, because otherwise we are normalizing what Taliban are doing. And for so many of us who either had the experience of living first time during Taliban regime, and now being in touch and knowing the reality, there's so many young women that are in need of to be educated and having that hope. So we were a very strong advocate for educating Afghan girls in Afghanistan through any means that's available, including the online education. And we still continue to do that. So we have engaged with different stakeholders, including the UN, and similar on the macroeconomic side. So we have done the same thing. We presented our paper to ECOSOC, the UN Economic and Social Council. So in various platforms, in various ways, we have tried to make sure and very humbly contribute as much as we could. But of course, at the end of the day, it's such a large and complex and difficult situation, large problem, that nobody has the right solution, to be very honest.
Well, thank you for explaining that, Ambassador Raz. We had a pretty interesting question from Claire, which I would like to pass on to Alice now, about healthcare. Claire is curious about how access to healthcare, or a lack of access, is impacting the ability of women and girls to participate in education, and if so, whether anyone is working on to address that issue.
Yeah, this is that's Claire. Thank you. That's a very important question, and I'm not, we haven't done recently any programs to address this, since the Taliban have now prohibited women from being trained as midwives, and back starting, I think, in December of last year, had really prohibited this education for women, and obviously incredibly cruel, because I think, Ambassador Roz can speak to it better than me, but in the areas where we work, women can really only go see other women to get basic services for healthcare and to deliver babies. So they are not treated by male doctors. So if you say that women can't be doctors, then you're basically saying women can't have access to education, period. So it is, the cruel and inhumane treatment is really heartbreaking. Right now, I can't say. I don't know how that is specifically affecting girls' ability to go to school. I would say generally, and again, where we work, which is communities that are largely remote and mountainous, there is very little access to education to begin with. I mean, to healthcare to begin with. So, but this obviously is one further challenge that is probably undermining the ability of more children to go to school. So I'm sorry, Claire, that's not a direct answer, but it's just highlighting the importance of your question. I think organizations that continue to advocate in this area are obviously UNICEF, but other organizations that do a lot of healthcare training for Afghan women. But maybe Ambassador Roz knows more about that.
I think, Alice, you said it right. It's a difficult time and a difficult situation, and of course, province to province, it really does matter. And larger cities, there is still the possibility, or there are still access for women to go to and have access to public health and doctors and health resources. But in rural area and especially in southern provinces, it's even more difficult. And it makes sense naturally to impact the for younger girls who are going to school, their health condition as well. And I think that's why it makes it even more important to proceed and move forward, especially with work that Alice is doing, Alice, on the community schools you have, teacher training, and even training on certain skill set, and it could be public health as well for women. And I know certain institutions and organizations are doing some, a large number of them is done by GCC countries. They are engaged on that heavily, but it still does not match the demand in the ground.
Thank you for clarification and your explanation. Due to time, unfortunately, this is going to have to be our last question. So we'll end with you, Ambassador Roz. You often raise Afghanistan's issues in international forums, showing your commitment to its people. How optimistic are you that world leaders will genuinely work to improve this situation?
Look, I'm very optimistic with the younger generation in Afghanistan. I think for me, what is happening right now in Afghanistan, that's not the reality and the truth to us. And if you speak to anybody in the ground, and I'm sure CI is in touch, they will tell you the truth. This is not who we are. This is not to how we have lived before, or in our belief system. So this is not the reality to us. And for me, my hope is really with the younger generation and the ways that they will find to bring the changes that requires. And of course, it's a very long shot. It's not an easy one. It's a difficult one. But we live on hope, correct? And we must have hope to move forward. And today we all came together and come together based on that hope we have, and we're still continuing, and I'm really happy we're not giving up on our hopes. So and even for those who are visiting the country, and I know very close people who are traveling, and when they come back, they really share the frustration that's inside the country. and that it doesn't seem long-term and sustainable. So that's the way I'm moving forward, and I'm really putting my bet on the younger generation, and that makes it even more critical for all of us to make sure they are educated, they have access, they are educated to the principles of the inclusivity, liberty, and stability and peace in Afghanistan.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Roz and Alice, and thank you to our participants who asked very, 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 very good questions. We are going to move on now, and we'd like to share a short video made by our Afghan partner, Wadan. And the music you'll hear is from a famous musician who's Bara Daria, and it is an Afghan Independence Day song. So we hope you enjoy.
استاد سمیه جان
Now I'd like to pass it over to Alice for our closing remarks.
Thanks, Bella. And I love watching that video and seeing the faces of those children. It always reminds us of, the human side of what we're doing and the people involved. And their cute little faces when they go to take the candy, which is like children everywhere around the world. So I love that video. Thank you to our partners, Wadan, for sharing that with us. So I want to remind you how you can stay engaged. Obviously, we are so thrilled you joined today, and that's the first way that you can engage is just by joining events like this. At CAI, we're doing a few things that are coming up. We are running a fundraising campaign right now, so I will remind you that we are trying to raise funds for Afghanistan and to support those programs that you heard about today. We're 70% to our match goal, which is $55,000, so $110,000. And so we're so close. We really hope that you can help us reach that first goalpost. Here's information about how to donate to that. We also remind you that we're this fall will be our Journey of Hope magazine will be coming out, which highlights the work that we're doing in all 3 countries. So please keep your eyes open for that. And today, if you want to see the recorded event and share it with friends, we'll be following up with resources and a link to this event, which was recorded. I should say there's another webinar that we'll be hosting in November that will share some features from the Journey of Hope magazine as well. So these events that CAI is having are now quarterly, so keep an eye out for the next event. Once again, huge thank you to the Afghanistan Policy Lab, to Adela Roz, to the team at the lab. Thank you so much to Salai and Bella, our own team, for doing the work today on the program, and to all of the staff and partners at CAI. This work wouldn't be possible without them, And then finally, again, to all of you. So we're just so grateful for your generosity and your kindness and your caring. Thank you again for joining, and stay tuned. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Alice.